Welcome back to the Crypto Channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is currently seeing a steady rise in the price after we just saw a slight little pullback over the last one day. And this short-term rise again in the price is potentially due to a few different factors. First of all, we're seeing a bounce in the US stock market alongside major inflows coming in from Wall Street. That is right, huge inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs, which I'll talk about in just a moment, alongside new liquidity building just above the price of Bitcoin that we need to pay attention to. So I'll be talking about that as well in just a moment, alongside Ethereum continuing to bounce around in this same sideways price range, while the price of XRP is continuing to hold on to and test this very important area of support. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, we need to take a quick look at the US stock market. This is the S&P 500 index on the 2-hour time frame. And right now, of course, we saw another open below the previous close. In other words, we saw a drop in the after hours trading and the pre-market trading. But throughout the trading day, just like what we saw in the previous trading day, we're currently seeing just another short-term bounce. And at least on the 2-hour time frame, still holding onto this area of support here in the S&P 500 index. And so, of course, this shorter term move as of recent has, of course, been a slight little pullback with bounces along the way. But ultimately, we're still within a bit of a larger sideways price range that's really lasted over the last couple of months. Since basically the beginning of this year, we've kind of just been bouncing around relatively sideways for the US stock market here. And so just keep in mind throughout the video, Bitcoin and crypto will likely play out something similar to whatever the US stock market is doing, which is ultimately chopping around relatively sideways, but in the imminent short term having another slight little bounce after just a slight little drop in the short term. So keep that in mind. And just before taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today, taking a quick look at some Bitcoin news today, because we actually saw a decent sized net inflow into the spot Bitcoin ETFs here on Monday. As we can see, the ETF inflow for Monday overall across all of the ETFs was $458.2 million US. So we're talking about almost $500 million US coming into the Bitcoin ETFs just on Monday. And keep in mind that average inflow for a regular day for the Bitcoin ETFs, the spot Bitcoin ETFs, an average inflow is just over 100 million, around $103 million. So once again, we saw over $450 million coming in on Monday. So more than 4 times that average inflow that we usually see on a regular day. So we are indeed actually seeing quite a lot of Wall Street money entering back into Bitcoin right now, which is something worth mentioning and worth paying attention to. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today on the weekly time frame, not a lot has changed on the larger time frames over the last one day. So of course, we still have a massive red signal right here in the super trend indicator, indicating a larger bear market or a larger correction in the price. And of course, on this weekly Bitcoin price chart, we still have a massive bearish divergence to watch out for, which is technically still active. We've not yet fully confirmed the end or the reversal out of this larger bearish trend. So keep that in mind. Not a lot changed on the larger time frames, but if we're taking a look at the 3-day time frame, once again, we're still in this larger bearish trend, the multi-month bearish trend, but in the somewhat short to mid-term during the trend, we're basically just chopping around sideways in a bit of a sideways price range. So not a lot changed here as well over the last one day. So if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at the 2-hour Bitcoin price chart, and obviously I recorded my last video just yesterday right around here. And as I said many times throughout my last video, I said, be cautious, be warned. We're likely going to see some sort of little cool off. We have a risk of a potential short-term pullback, considering back then we were, of course, approaching the top side of this sideways price range right here. We're also getting very close to overbought, which is signals telling us to expect basically some sort of little turnaround soon in the price of Bitcoin. And that's exactly what happened over the last one day. We did see that turnaround. We did see just a slight little pullback, helping to reset this RSI towards more neutral levels. And right now we have a little more room towards the upside again here in the 2-hour Bitcoin RSI. And so far, we're already starting to utilize some of that room. And remember, Bitcoin in the short-term moves here is just following similar price action to what the US stock market is doing, which is, of course, a slight drop and then currently a slight bounce. Obviously, seeing something very similar in the price of Bitcoin here. And what we are also seeing right now on this Bitcoin price chart, the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, is a major area of liquidity, a new area to watch out for, building above the price of Bitcoin at around 70.1K to 70.3 3K. And the last time we had an area or a level of liquidity like this that was above the price of Bitcoin was back here around a week ago, give or take. And of course, the price of Bitcoin went towards the upside to wipe out that liquidity. So keep that in mind. As always, there's no such thing as a guarantee, but it's a very high chance that soon, whether it's in a few hours or in a few days, sometime within the next few days, most likely, there's a high probability, no guarantees, but a high chance we could ultimately hit that area on the price chart to wipe out that liquidity at just above 70,000, around 70.1K to 70.3K, which is sitting right around here. And of course, with the inflows coming in from the Bitcoin ETFs, with the stock market having a slight little bounce in the short term, and of course, now that we've already played out that slight little cool off over the last one day, once again, this is all pointing towards potentially a little bit more of just a short-term relief here within the next couple of days, moving closer towards the high end of the sideways price range. Remember, we're still basically in a sideways price range here on the 3-day time frame at the daily chart, bouncing around between support and resistance. We still have a lot of support at $60,000 and $63,000 as well, and a lot of resistance, especially around 71 to 72,000. And so overall, those are the key signals and levels to watch out for moving forward. Of course, the larger timeframes not really changed at all over the last one day, but in the short-term moves here, expect as a likely scenario in the coming days, the price to slowly move a little higher towards the top side of this resistance. Of course, the one caveat to that would be if we see a major dump in the stock market, of course, Bitcoin will likely follow what the stock market is doing. So if, for example, we see a major dump in the stock market, then all bets are off. We'll likely see a pullback in crypto. But for as long as the stock market is at least holding in this range right here, holding this area as support, it is quite likely we'll continue just a little more of a relief here. It's not going to be a straight line up, just a slight little relief towards the top side of the resistance. But remember, we're still in this sideways price range, and remember, still within a longer term bearish trend. This is just talking about a very short term movement. And of course, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any crypto, you need to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And if you use the first link below the video in the description and in the pinned comment, that first link below the video will take you to this page right here over on the 2bit crypto exchange, which by the way is a no KYC exchange and is an exchange that I personally use myself. And so if you simply just by making your account using that first link below the video to 2bit, once again on this page you can see a $3.5 million USD prize pool here up for grabs simply just by trading crypto using that link. So obviously if you're going to be trading crypto anyway or preparing to take the next trading opportunity, you might as well check this out. You might as well take advantage of this. Once again, first link below the video. And remember, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin dominance chart on the daily time frame, and the imminent short-term move is of course another slight little bounce right now. But overall, in terms of the trend or the momentum, we're still relatively flat, kind of just bouncing around in a bit of a range at the moment, which means a lot of the altcoin market on average will still likely be performing very similar to whatever Bitcoin does. So keep that in mind moving forward. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the 3-day chart, of course, the 3-day Ethereum price chart looks almost identical to the 3-day Bitcoin price chart. Clearly, the larger multi-month trend is still technically bearish. We've not yet fully confirmed the end or the reversal out of that larger bearish trend. But in the somewhat short to mid-term here, we're still just bouncing around in a bit of a sideways price range, playing out this oversold signal in the 3-day Ethereum RSI. So not a lot changed on this chart over the last one day. And if we're zooming into the daily time frame, of course, we're perfectly bouncing between this Fibonacci level of support and this previous Fibonacci level of support, now acting as resistance. First of all, this support level still sitting at about just above 1.8K, around 1810 to 1820, and this resistance sitting at just above 2.1K, more specifically around 2150. And so, like I've been saying every day over the last 1 month or so, since all the way back here, expect most likely a lot of choppy sideways price action in this range here between this support and this resistance, which is all still perfectly playing out as I predicted many weeks ago here. And if we're taking a look at the immediate short-term moves, looking at the 2-hour time frame, of course, over the last one day or so, we've been perfectly playing out a slight little bearish divergence with higher highs in the price, lower highs in the RSI, meaning expect basically a slight little pullback is a very likely scenario from a bearish divergence, the opposite of a bullish divergence. And keep in mind that this bearish divergence has not fully been invalidated yet. Technically speaking, it is still currently active, which means just in the short term, in the coming hours, maybe the next day or so, it could still influence the price, which means we could still be lacking bullish momentum. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a lot of bearish price either. It doesn't mean a lot of bearish price action either. It can just mean maybe some choppy sideways price action, but ultimately don't expect a significant amount of bullish momentum, at least right now in the imminent short term. And if we're taking a look at the price of Solana on the 3-day time frame, it's a very similar situation here. We're still within the larger multi-month bearish trend, but the short to mid-term situation is that we're still bouncing around relatively sideways in a sideways price range between support and resistance. First of all, we still have a lot of support here in between around $75 to $80 and a lot of resistance in between $95 to $105, but we also have some short-term resistance at pretty much exactly $90 as well. And we're also still trying to play out this oversold signal in the 3-day Solana RSI, which is another cause and another factor pointing towards this sideways price range continuing at least a little longer here in the short to midterm. And if we're taking a look at the 2-hour Solana price chart, looking at the very short-term moves, obviously over the last 1 day, we have been perfectly playing out a slight little bearish divergence here, as we can see. And so that was one of the major factors as to why we saw a slight little pullback over the last 1 day. But of course, due to other factors, for example, the price of Solana simply just following Bitcoin and other major altcoins right now in the short term, simply following very similar price action as we could see. But on top of that, of course, we were approaching the high end of the sideways price range here. As we can clearly see, the price is still relatively just bouncing around relatively sideways in a bit of a range at the moment. And we were at the high end of the range, which is where we normally start to see the price turn around at. So this slight little pullback should not be surprising. This is what I warned about many times in my last video before it happened. But the good news is that at least for now, we're still in this sideways price range, which means at least for now, the bearish moves are somewhat limited, because as we approach the lower end of the range, of course, those are the areas on the price chart where we're likely going to see some sort of bounce back up. So even if this bearish price action continues a little longer, soon enough, we'll likely see another short-term bounce to continue remaining in this range for a little longer here. And so overall, expect similar price action for Solana as what Bitcoin is doing, but perhaps a little bit weaker for Solana just in the shorter term, considering the slight little move up in the Bitcoin dominance in the short term, which means in the imminent short term, Bitcoin slightly outperforming a lot of the altcoin market. And of course, Bitcoin did not necessarily have the bearish divergence right here. Obviously, we had higher highs in the RSI and higher highs in the price, whereas a lot of these altcoins like Solana, Ethereum, etc., did indeed have just a short-term bearish divergence confirmed on the 2-hour time frame, which means some of these alts are looking a little weaker than Bitcoin, but still expect somewhat similar price action for a lot of these alts as to what Bitcoin is doing in the short term. And if we're taking a look at XRP on the weekly time frame, if we're talking about the long-term trends, the larger bearish divergence, this is all still playing out as predicted, basically since all the way back up here. You can even watch my videos all the way back then around early August 2025, for example, when the price was above $3, talking about this multi-month collapse still to come. And right now, obviously, this is all still playing out. This is not ended, at least right now, but just in the shorter term, we're still running into this major area of support here, still sitting in between around $1.30 to $1.40. So at least for now, continue to expect a lot of support in that area. But if we ultimately confirm a break below that area, so if, for example, we confirm a weekly candle close below $1.30, and especially if we fail to get back above that area, in that situation, the next target towards the downside would be sitting at approximately $1.13. And below that, the next significant area of support would be sitting in between 90 cents to $1. So keep that in mind moving forward. And if we're zooming into the 3-day time frame, we're still trying to play out this oversold signal similar to Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., playing out an oversold signal in the 3-day RSI. And right now we're seeing something similar for XRP, kind of just consolidating somewhat on the price chart, not really seeing a lot of bullish moves or a lot of bearish moves, just basically having a little bit of a chill time at the moment from the larger bearish trend, but technically still within the larger bearish trend, at least for now. We've not yet fully confirmed the end or the bottom of this trend right here. And in terms of the imminent short-term moves, as in what to expect in the coming hours or days, ultimately just follow my Bitcoin, Ethereum analysis, etc., to figure out what is likely going to happen for a lot of these altcoins. Is a very likely scenario just in short-term moves here. And if we're taking a look at Chainlink on the 3-day time frame, it's a very similar situation for Chainlink. The larger multi-month trend technically still bearish, but still bouncing between this support and resistance. Not a lot changed on this chart over the last 1 day. So without wasting your time getting straight into the short-term moves, looking at the 2-hour Chainlink price chart, of course, over the last 1 day, we have been playing out this slight little bearish divergence here, which I did warn about in my last video, telling you that it's most likely going to play out some sort of slight little pullback just in the short term here very, very soon, is what I said right around here here in my last video. Obviously, that's now perfectly played out as predicted. And technically speaking, this is still active. We've not yet fully confirmed the end of this little bearish move here. But for the most part, I don't expect a huge crash right now. Just a bit of weakness in the shorter term, lacking bullish momentum. But we're still in this same range right now, which means, at least for now, just in the short term, the downside moves are limited to this area of support in between 790 to 850, acting as strong support still on the price chart here, which means, of course, if the price were to actually continue a bit more bearish price action, expect some sort of bounce around that area on the price chart as a very likely scenario. And remember, also keep an eye on what Bitcoin is doing, for example, because if, for example, Bitcoin continues maybe a little bit of choppy sideways price action, and then within the next couple of days, a slight little relief towards that liquidity that I mentioned earlier in the video, we could potentially see something similar for a lot of these alts just in the short term. So keep that in mind. But overall, for the most part, still just bouncing around in a range is still the situation for a lot of the market at the moment. And obviously, if you want to trade any of these moves, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to take advantage of massive bonuses only available using those links to certain exchanges. And if you want to actually know how you can trade these moves, no matter what direction the price goes, to profit at all times in the market, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen, because the video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.